Welcome in, Oklahoma Sooners fans and college football fans, to another episode of Oklahoma Sooners Live. This is Oklahoma Sooners Live here on the Oklahoma at the Voice of College Football. A little bit of technical difficulties getting loaded up today, but hopefully that all goes away. We've got a very fun episode tonight, so make sure to jump in that live chat. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, that's really all we're going live tonight. We can't really get the X working, so that's kind of part of the technical difficulties. I'm working on that, so we're going to get that going. But anyways, jump in that live chat tonight. If you are watching live, if you're not watching live, that's okay. You can still comment down below. We are going to be talking a lot about Oklahoma in this upcoming season. It's off season right now, guys, so we don't have a whole lot to talk about, but we're going to talk about this upcoming season and what Oklahoma's got going for them. Just a quick reminder, all donations and super chats will be read on the show. Otherwise, we'll get to the comments later on. I've also got a guest that's going to be joining me. I've got Cole Thompson, who's going to be coming on here in a little while, and we're going to talk about Oklahoma, kind of the expectations for Oklahoma going into their second season in the SEC. Brent Venables' fourth year. I almost said third. It's his fourth year as a head coach, and it's been disappointing, no doubt. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Just because, you think about what's really shaping up to be a massive year for Oklahoma. It really is. It's going to be huge because of what happened last season. I think last season even builds a bigger anticipation, more hopes, and more more of a buildup for Oklahoma going into this upcoming season. Personally, I think that that's what makes this upcoming year so massive. As the Sooners, they really are gearing up for their second season in the SEC. Again, fourth year for Brent Venables. And it's a year unlike any other where Oklahoma really feels like they have to jump back. They have to bounce back. And that's kind of the frustrating thing for Oklahoma at this point. It's one of those things that, with Oklahoma, you can't come into this new conference that you felt confident about getting into. You can't jump into this new conference and only win 2 games in that conference. You can't only beat 2 of the teams within this conference. You really have to show something more than that. And, Oklahoma fell short of that. That's something that Oklahoma felt pretty down about. They were kind of frustrated. Oklahoma fans are frustrated. They're looking forward to the year 2, hoping that something can bounce back from that horrible season a season ago, and we can sit here and talk about the excuses, the reasons, the explanation of what went on, and we've already done that. We've done that all season last season, and then of course here on this show we've talked about it. Going into this upcoming season in ad nauseum. So we're not going to talk too much more about that. What happened. How can you respond from it? And with Cole, what I would like to do with Cole whenever he gets in here, we've had planned for him to jump in around 7:30. So if you're waiting to hear from Cole Thompson, he's with SEC Unfiltered. That's when he'll be in here. But and go ahead and jump in the live chat too and drop your questions for Cole. I'd like to have those before he's able to join in with us too, so that way we can have those questions ready to go. I've got some questions for my own, to be able to ask him. But looking forward to this upcoming season, I think as Oklahoma's looking into this second season in the SEC, they know they need a big turnaround. And if you don't have a big turnaround, what does that say for the future of the program? So I think Oklahoma fans can buckle up and kind of fasten in for, I think, what should be an exciting season, at least preseason. This is a huge season. Preseason, I think this is very exciting. Preseason, you are anticipating what could be for so long, and that's really what makes this anticipation in Norman so electric. Yeah, first, let's set the stage and go back to 2024, this 2024 season. And I know we don't want to reminisce on it too long because it wasn't a good one. It was probably the worst that many of us Oklahoma fans can recall. And it was a rough one, and there's no sugarcoating that. But the Sooners, they finished 6-7 overall, which when you look at where they were when they were sitting at 4-5 wins for a while, nobody would have picked them to win 6 at that point. Anyways, they finished 6-7. Nobody wanted that for Oklahoma, except maybe opposing fans, but nobody within the coaching staff. I think a lot of media people who even predicted Oklahoma to go there didn't want to see Oklahoma fall like that. And obviously the coaches, the fan base, everyone surrounding Oklahoma didn't want to see that disappointing season where they went 2-6 in the SEC. Just a terrible season. And then you have to think too, and I know another thing that Oklahoma fans don't want me to bring up is the fact that you completely got drubbed by, 34-3 against Texas. That was absolutely horrible. 34-3 in the Red River rivalry. That's twice now that Brent Venables teams have been blown out by Texas in the Red River rivalry, and Oklahoma fans want an answer. Oklahoma fans specifically for that rivalry game, because it's not everything for Oklahoma, but that's a huge part of your season. There's so much hype and so much energy on both sides. We both tease about that's the Super Bowl. Both teams want to beat each other just as badly. So, I don't think that that's anything to ignore. That's a huge game for Oklahoma and for Texas. And so the fact that Texas has gotten the best of Oklahoma by not allowing them to score a single touchdown, and in one of those games not even score a single point, that hurts for Oklahoma. That hurts for Oklahoma fans, and they need a bounce back. We'll talk about Brent Venables later on, and especially I want to get thoughts from Cole. He's been supportive of Oklahoma, and that's why I wanted to talk with him. He's been supportive of Oklahoma since they came into the SEC, but he's also totally unbiased. I can sit here and tell you my opinions and back them up with stats and whatnot, but I'm still biased, and I'm willing to admit that. A good friend of mine, Jake Crane, he always talks about we all cheer for somebody, we all pull for somebody, and that's the truth. This offense last season is obviously the one that Oklahoma fans want to forget. The worst in modern era, worst since 1999 for sure, and that's in this modern era. There is no offense that went as poorly as Oklahoma, ranking in the bottom, not just in the bottom of the conference, but the bottom of the entire FBS in so many categories. Literally rock bottom in the 100 pluses in just about every important category. And of course, you think of being almost dead last in yards per play, and you talk about the injuries, the inconsistencies, and I think some of those inconsistencies go on the coaches. Some of them fall on players. Players do have to take some accountability for what happens on the field, but ultimately a lot of it falls on the coaches. The coaches are the ones that are putting them in the situations that they're failing at. So that's where they have to adapt. They're the ones that are teaching these young men to go out there and perform at the highest level. And so it ultimately all falls on the coaches, but there is some that you put on the players. And of course, like I said, the injuries, a lot of Oklahoma fans are frustrated about that. And there is a problem there, obviously. You don't get that many injuries without there being a problem, but it also is a mixture of bad luck, right? So there's just so much that went into that last season. But there's one thing that, even though they came in and realized that the SEC hits you like a freight train, and it does, and I think even Texas learned that from the few really true tough games that they played, like Georgia twice. And they had a couple of other games that were tough, and they found that out. So Oklahoma and Texas find that out, that this is a tough conference. It's definitely not the Big 12 anymore. And Oklahoma got the worst end of that because of everything brewing leading into that first season. Really, it's at a tough time with everything switching. I think with Jeff Lebby leaving, that hurt. And then, trying to also deal with the departure of a quarterback, which, a lot of fans have a misunderstanding of what happened there. Dylan Gabriel wasn't supposed to come back for another year, and he never intended to. Even the coaching staff didn't intend for him to, because he told them that he didn't intend to come back. Dylan Gabriel went to Brent Venables and said, "I'm not coming back." And Brent Venables said, "I didn't know I had a chance to keep you around. I thought you were just done. I didn't even know you had eligibility." And you can blame Brent Venables for that, I suppose, but I don't know how you would when Dylan Gabriel, he wasn't planning on coming back. Nobody planned on it. Nobody in that entire coaching staff, nobody, not even Dylan Gabriel himself was planning to come back. Again, blame who you want to blame, but that was something that Oklahoma had to deal with. And then, of course, all the injuries, specifically all right there in fall, towards the end of spring camp, you had some banged up players, but then you got into fall camp, and it just seemed like week after week we were getting a new injury report on another key player. And it kept on building up, and then you get into the season, and more of it happened. Of course, even last season, you talk about an offensive line that really was questionable even if you were completely healthy last season. You talk about that offensive line, and that's an offensive line for Oklahoma that there was a lot of question marks because you lost really your entire offensive line going into last season. You didn't have a single guy that played with the man next to him, and so that is a big problem when you're going into your first season in the SEC, where the trenches matter most. So there's a lot that goes into it with what happened, and Oklahoma knows that the SEC can hit you like that freight train, but it stings. That last season, it stings a lot. But there's one thing that Oklahoma fans, at the very least, know, and I think many others also know, is that Oklahoma is not one of these programs that's going to stay down for long. And I don't believe that. I know there's a lot of people calling Oklahoma the next Nebraska project, that you went off to a new conference before being ready. Nebraska is a totally different animal, a totally different concept. I'm very close to Nebraska. My dad, my brother, my dad's whole side, they're all Nebraska fans, grew up, born and raised there. So, I'm around a lot of Nebraska fans, and I know that program very well. I wouldn't say like the back of my hand, but I know them very well, just because I'm around it a lot. And that's kind of my second team to pull for. It's one of those old rivalries that meant something in my household, so I do miss that. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people are looking at Oklahoma. Some people are looking at Oklahoma and saying that there's no way they're going to bounce back. But there's something that I believe, and I think a lot of Oklahoma fans believe. If you know anything about Oklahoma and the history there, it's that they're going to bounce back. They're going to find a way to bounce back. And how do they do that? Is it going to be Brent Venables that leads that charge? I do think most Oklahoma fans feel good about Jim Nagy and what he's done. So that's definitely something to look at, and I think they can see that as the future and recognize that there's something there. And Oklahoma fans know that Brent Venables wants nothing more than for this program, not just for his own job. He wants that entire program to succeed because that means something to him. That was early in his career when he was tied to Oklahoma. The history that he's got there, that feels like home to him. That's why he came back to Oklahoma to take this head coaching job. So he wants it just as much as anyone else, not just for his job, but for the history there and for what he knows this program to be. He understands the mentality there. Now, will he be able to do it? That's a totally different animal. We can argue about what he feels and what he's able to do. We can have that argument, but we do know that we have to keep those separate. Oklahoma fans should know that this is a resilient team, a historically resilient team that has had its ups and downs. In 2025, it's all about that bounce back. Like I kind of made a little bit of a pun earlier, but about buckling up, because we know that what Ben Arbuckle brings to the table is what brings Oklahoma fans together to be so excited about what's possible for this 2025 squad. So, what's the vibe going into this year two in the SEC? What's going to happen here in this year two of the SEC, what's going to happen, I guess, is where we're leading into. Of course, you got a lot of hope, you got a lot of hunger. That this Oklahoma team, and specifically the guys that are coming back, which I was just looking, and I think there's only 12 teams. I can't remember now. Let me see if I can find it real quick, because it was literally something that just popped up like 5 minutes ago. So Oklahoma is one of very few teams that have 12 plus starters returning on their entire roster. One of very few. There's a handful of teams that have 12 or more starters coming back to Oklahoma to start, most likely starting this season. That's huge. They are ranked towards the top for returning production, not returning players, returning production. It's incredible for a team to be able to do that. And so for Oklahoma, they look at that, and the production that's coming back is the production that you want, mainly on the defense. And so, there's a lot for Oklahoma fans to look forward to for this upcoming season. Oklahoma fans know that those players that are returning know what that felt like last season. They know that they were just barely short of coming up with a winning record, not just a winning record, but they were just barely short of really pulling it out in some of those games. Personally, I think Missouri, Ole Miss should have been a win the way that Oklahoma played in that first half. That was just poorly managed. I would say coaching takes a lot of that. South Carolina should have never gone down the way it did. I don't know if I say that Oklahoma should have won that game, but they definitely shouldn't have gone down 21-0 with only 5 minutes into the game. And so this team remembers those moments. A lot of this team remembers those moments. They also remember the sweet moments, like the Kip Six that won the Auburn game in a game that it was a tough environment. Auburn's a tough team. Don't let the record fool you. Auburn is a tough team. They're especially when you play them on the road in Jordan-Hare. That's a tough team and a tough win. And so they remember that. They also remember the heartbreaking loss against Tennessee. They remember all these heartbreaking losses, but they also remember beating Alabama. They remember the ups and the downs of last season. And so there's no doubt that I think that there's going to be a lot of fight coming back through this roster. Brent Venables, I think when you look at Brent Venables, and we talk about it as a fan base, that he's on the hot seat. Media is all talking about him being on the hot seat. Don't think for a second that he doesn't know that. He even mentioned in his interview with Josh Pate. Josh Pate's one of my favorite, honestly, probably my favorite college football analysts, because he's just very real, doesn't really show any bias really in anything in my eyes. I know a lot of people call him SEC bias, but I've seen him show that same bias to the Big Ten. I've seen him show the same bias to specific teams in the ACC. I don't think that's bias. I think that's just him following what he believes to be true, and he's a very good one at that. Anyways, Brent Venables mentioned it to him that he knows he's on the hot seat, and he feels like he's going to thrive even better with that. He knows he's on the hot seat, so he said, I'm not going to rely on anyone else to run my defense. I'm going to take over my defense. I'm going to run that defense because I'm the one in charge here. I'm the one that gets fired if we don't win this season. So I'm the one that calling him. He knows he's on the hot seat. He knows that the pressure is on him. And we know that Brent Venables is being pretty genuine when he's talking about that and talking about how he likes the pressure. I think you can look at his past career and kind of piece that together. Even his first year in Clemson, not really the same type of pressure that he's going to lose his job, but there was definitely pressure there that Dabo Swinney was on kind of not really a total hot seat, but he was definitely riding that not doing as well, I guess. He needed to turn things around. It was in his we turned it around now kind of season, and not necessarily on the hot seat yet, but it's getting warm. And Brent Venables came in there knowing that he had to produce to keep himself around and to help Swinney out and help the Clemson Tigers out. And so he felt that pressure there. Again, not the same type of pressure. I think this is even bigger because now a lot of jobs ride on his shoulders. And so I think that's even more pressure now, which pressure makes diamonds. Let's see what Brent Venables is really made of. I've always liked Brent Venables. I've always backed him up. I think the first year, you can't really blame too much there. Second year, I felt like there was something there that we saw. And third year, it sucked that Lebby left. And so that was something. And there's a lot that goes into the third year. Third year was just a question mark. You can argue both ways, and I see it both ways. There was things that I know Brent Venables could have done better. Should he have kept an offensive coordinator that was just not performing around as long as he did? Should he have not played younger guys when maybe it would have been a good thing just to throw them in there and see what we can do with it? There's a lot of questions that you have about Brent Venables because of his third year, but there's also other things that you know that he couldn't necessarily control, or there's questions about how much control he had of it. Anyways, this is definitely the year that there are no excuses. And we talked about that last week on Thursday with Jay Smith. He was on here talking with me about, how there really is no excuses. This is the season that when you look at the roster and you look at what you've got in front of you, you've built up that offense to something that has the weapons. That there was injury issues last season, and you should be steering clear of that and watching out for that. You know that the trenches are what you need to work on. There's no excuse. You know what the SEC layout looks like. You know what the land is all about. So there is no excuses. That's ultimately what Brent Venables faces this season. So again, the pressure's there. He knows it. And again, taking on that defensive coordinator role by himself, I think he's extra locked in, and I think that's why if he wasn't going to get the top guy in Jim Knowles, he wasn't going to let anybody else touch it. That's on him. He's taking credibility. He's not entirely credibility, but he's taking complete control of that because he wants to make sure that it's in the best hands, and there's no better hands than his own. And he believes that. I think many of us would believe that too. I think he's honestly top 3, top 5 at least defensive coordinators in all of the nation. So if he were to not work out as a head coach, he's still getting a job as a defensive coordinator almost anywhere he wants. And so that's why he takes it in on himself, and he's locked in on that side of the ball. Losing guys like Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman, that hurts, but they proved last year that this defense can hang in the SEC. This defense can do something in the SEC. So, I think that's special, and I think that's something that you have to look at Brent Venables being the reason why this defense. He's done really good at recruiting overall as a whole. He's done really good at recruiting, and specifically on the defensive side of the ball. I know Oklahoma's had their struggles with position groups like wide receiver or even tight end. There's been some struggle there. But when it comes down to the defensive side of the ball, name me where Oklahoma has really missed on a lot of targets in the last 2 or 3 years when Brent Venables has been in charge. He's gotten his guys. His guys are starting to play. Guys like Eli Bowen are shining and growing. Guys like Gentry Williams, he was able to rest up a lot of last season, most of last season, really, I think all of last season, and do something there. And so this season, now there's a lot of hype around him. That's a Brent Venables type guy. And so there was others that became a Brent Venables guy like Billy Bowman and Danny Stutzman and Ethan Downs, who really grew. And you saw that from year 1 where they were solid. It looked better. Year 2, man, they really felt like they were getting things. They were understanding them and moving it. And year 3 obviously showed that, again, they can hang with anybody in the nation. They can hang in the trenches. They can hang with even the secondary did a pretty good job for Oklahoma last season. There were some chunk plays allowed, and you've got to understand too that they were going against teams that are able to break free for those chunk plays every once in a while because they're recruiting at an extremely high level, way bigger than what we saw in the Big 12. So, this defense can hang with the SEC, but the big question is the offense. New offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle, new dual threat quarterback John Mateer. Of course, then you even bring in a new guy in the backfield to really make it one of the most coveted backfields in all of college football, let alone in the SEC, with John Mateer and Jaden Ott. And you've still got guys like Taylor Tatum, Xavier Robinson, Javante Barnes that are also in that backfield with them. And we even talked about Blaylock as well, a young guy coming in, and he might see the field. And if he were to really do something special, who knows if he ends up seeing a little bit of an Xavier Robinson type game. I don't know. This is all speculation at this point. But we've got so much talent in that running back room. Anyways, you even look at the offensive line and what they've done there, trying to revamp that. You've got guys coming back, which you really like because that wasn't the case a year ago. And you've also got guys that you brought in, young guys like Ryan Foje, Michael Fasusi, even Luke Baklenko, if I can get that name out right, Derek Simmons, Mikula. You've got guys that you built to revamp this offensive line, not just totally redo it, but to revamp it, to really bump it to the next level. And it's been catching a lot of eyes in the spring for very good reason. This offensive line has competed at a much higher level in the spring. Now you can say, Josh, that's just spring ball. You can't get too excited about what you're seeing in spring ball. So I totally understand that. I agree with that. But it's an improvement from what we saw at this point in the season last season. So that is absolutely something. Just want to give a quick update. Cole was texting me, so I wanted to look at that one. He's still looking to be on here a little bit late, but still around that 7:30 mark, so we should be good whenever we get Cole in here. So again, jump in the live chat. All donations and super chats will be read on the show. If you've got questions that you want to ask Cole Thompson from SEC Unfiltered, he's an amazing guy. Like I said, he's very up on Oklahoma. He likes Oklahoma, and he wants them to do good. You heard that from him all season last season, so that's why I thought it'd be fun to kind of pick his brain on what he sees out of Oklahoma this upcoming season. But if you have questions for Cole, then go ahead and drop that down in the chat, and I will try to look through those before we get to Cole whenever he hops on. But anyways, bouncing back to this offensive line, it's a completely revamped offensive line that is ready. It looks much more ready to compete. Now, is it going to be the top offensive line in the SEC? No. Can it be in the top 7 offensive lines? Yes, and that's a good thing. If you can be in the top, there's 16 teams in the SEC. If you can be in the top 10 of the offensive lines, you are not only showing a huge improvement from an offensive line that allowed 50 sacks last season, but you're showing that you can compete with the SEC in the trenches, and that's really what really matters when it comes down to it. Is how much can you compete with the teams around you? I think you've got the makings of something special with that offense. And again, that's why Oklahoma fans are so excited. That's why Oklahoma fans are looking at what is about to come and have so much anticipation, so much hype around this team, because they know what the defense was capable of last season. And again, a lot of returning starters, a lot of guys that we've got a very high upside, like Robert Spears-Jennings. You've got R. Mason Thomas. You've got Kendall Dolby, who should be healthier and ready to go. And Kendall Daniels comes in from Oklahoma State. I know it's not a returner. You got guys like Grayson Halton, and there in the interior. You were able to keep, of course, Jaden Jackson. You were able to keep David Stone from going out, so you've still got that depth there. This defensive line is huge. And then, of course, you go on the other end, too. One guy that we were talking about last Thursday with Marvin Jones Jr., a transfer in from Florida State. You've got so much to look forward to in this defense from returning guys, Peyton and Eli Bowen, a couple of others just to add to the list. And then, of course, Gentry Williams, hoping that he's completely healthy and ready to roll, because we know what kind of animal he is. He's honestly an on-field 5-star type of talent, and that's what you want on this defense. So we know what that defense is capable of. We know what they were able to do a season ago, and with a lot of returning production. Like I said before, I didn't even mention Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie. With Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman leaving, those were the two biggest losses from this defense a season ago. But even with that, and I actually just saw this pop up too. What about PJ? Yeah, PJ Adebawore. You've got a lot of younger guys too. Sammy Osamigo. I'm probably saying his last name wrong too. I've got to have it up in front of me in order to pronounce it right. But you've got so much on that defense. You've got so much on that defense that is capable of doing what it did last season, even without Danny and Billy. Because even without Danny and Billy, you've got guys that are willing and able to step up into those roles. You got Michael Boganovsky, who is going to step up into some sort of role, maybe allowing a guy like Peyton Bowen to step up into Billy's role. Maybe we're not making comparisons and saying that he's going to be the same player, but we're talking about two leaders on that defense. And of course, Kip stepping into that. Kendall Dolby has really stepped into that leadership role a lot this offseason as well. And there's so many guys that have really shown that. R. Mason Thomas is a leader. There's so many leaders over there that we have no doubts about this defense. I think we feel very confident about what this defense is capable of. I've shown my concern a little bit with the secondary. That's really my only concern with Oklahoma. But what can this Oklahoma offense bring to the table? What can the offense do for Oklahoma this upcoming season? Because we know that that's where they struggled. We know that that's where Oklahoma fell short, was being able to put together a competent offense. Not even just, it doesn't have to be a lighted up offense. If you can jump into the top 50 offenses in yardage, maybe yards per play, if you can score 20 points a game, average 25 points a game, you are doing something special with this defense. And that's where we believe that Oklahoma can win 9, maybe even 10 games if you pull out an upset in there that you're not supposed to. There's really no ceiling for what this team can do based on what the offense is going to do. And that's what leads in so much anticipation. Let's be real with what Oklahoma, what Sooner Nation expects. And I haven't gone through to actually read the comments, but I'm assuming that some of you guys are probably throwing in there, I don't care. I want a 10-win season. I want an 11. I want to go undefeated and win a national championship next year. Let's be honest with what Oklahoma fans want, what Sooner Nation really wants. They want that national championship contending team. They want this team, this upcoming season, they want them in the playoffs. And that's what the expectation is at Oklahoma, and it should be. I am not criticizing anyone for having their expectations on Oklahoma to be there, because Oklahoma fans know better than anyone. And I was just talking to actually Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered. I met him at the College World Series, and we were talking about Oklahoma. And he's like, I didn't realize this, and I think a lot of people don't realize this, but with Oklahoma fans know what they're about. The rest of us in the SEC just didn't realize what Oklahoma really is all about, what the history there really is. We knew about the Bakers and the Kylers and all that, but we just didn't really understand that, You guys have national championships up there. You have modern national championships. Of course, it's been a while. It's been since 2001, but you guys have them there, and you guys have been back there. Against Boise, Florida, and what was the other one? So Boise, Florida, and USC. So, you've got times that you made it there. You just couldn't get yourself over the hump, and that's why they called him Big Game Bob. But, and so, him and I were talking about that, but Oklahoma fans know what Oklahoma's all about. Oklahoma fans know what is expected here, and it's a standard set by 7 national championships, a standard set by guys like Bud and Barry and Bob and what they've done. And now in the SEC, although we know and we understand more than ever of what kind of a grind that brings there in the SEC, it's still that expectation. Those who are faithful in Norman and willing to show up and sell that place out week after week, they know that at least 9-10 wins is what we're shooting for every season. And that's just on your 8 or 9 wins is, man, like this season didn't go how we wanted, not 6. That's what Oklahoma fans need. You're not going for 7. I know I've mentioned this before, but with Brent Venables, if Brent Venables were to win 7, I see a scenario where even at 7, they keep him around. I think that's kind of your teeter-totter point. Now, how do you win those 7 and how do you lose the other 5 or 6? I think that's kind of dependent on, how those are lost. But, if you have a 7-win season that does not look good, a 7-win season that you won the games that you're supposed to win, you pulled out a couple good ones, but you just got mollywopped and you looked embarrassing in the SEC, then we're talking about him leaving. And I see that kind of being a point where 7 is kind of either way. 6, I think he's got to be out the door, right? Oklahoma fans want him out the door at 7. That's why I say I see a scenario. I agree with you. I think, if I was a fan of any program that was expecting national championships like we do at Oklahoma, I would not ever want to be complacent with a 7-win season. You can be content with an 8 or 9-win season when things don't go your way. Look at Alabama. Things didn't go their way last season, and they still ended up with 9 wins. Ole Miss is one of those teams that I know they're not really expecting as much as even Oklahoma. They're not a blue blood the way that Oklahoma is, but Lane Kiffin's got them on their way there. Oklahoma expects more, and so I totally understand fans expecting more out of Oklahoma, and expecting more out of their team, not wanting to budge for 7. But you look at 8 or 9 and you say, okay, that was a down year. 10, 11, 12 is what you're shooting for all the time. Especially in today's college football, you've got to be happy, and I think pretty well just overall content with 10 wins, because 10 wins, 9 wins in the SEC gets you right on the verge. You're talking college football playoffs now with it being expanded to 12. And of course, 10, especially in the SEC, you're making it into the playoffs. There's no doubt about that. So, I think that's something that is definitely something to look at for Oklahoma fans. You're content with those 8 or 9 win seasons on down years. This I think would be one of those seasons that you look at 8 or 9 and you say, okay, yeah, we can deal with that, but what are we moving forward with? And I think 8 or 9 shows you that Oklahoma's moving in the right direction. 9 absolutely shows you you're moving in the right direction. And there's been plenty in the offseason where I think that's the case. But we will be jumping over to the chat. I'll try to read through that a little bit, see if there was any questions for Cole. But I do have Cole here on with me. Let me go ahead and bring him on the stage here if I can. What's up, Cole? How you doing, man?
Another dog-eat-dog world, stuck in traffic. You live in 610. Anybody that knows the loop of Houston, you are always in a standstill. And that's what leads to you having to push things back. But we're here. We're ready to talk Oklahoma. And I feel like I'm the only person that covers the SEC that is way too high and drinking the Crimson Kool-Aid beyond belief. And I'm very okay with that.
No, yeah, I was just talking about that too a little bit ago when I was, telling my audience that, that's one thing that I think Oklahoma fans like about you is that you seem like you're one of the few that are like, man, I want to see this Oklahoma team come in and do something in the SEC. There's not a whole lot of guys in the SEC that are like, hey, let's cheer on these Sooners. And that was something you did last year. And obviously didn't go their way. Didn't not at all. No. And there was a lot that played into that, but I think the main reason why I wanted to talk to you is to kind of get it from an unbiased source, a guy that I know you're a little bit biased because you are cheering on the Sooners to do well, but you're not an Oklahoma fan.
No.
You're not one of us, and so from an unbiased source, what seems to have been Oklahoma's biggest downfall in their first season in the SEC.
Well, okay, let's start off with this. I like when teams are competitive in the world of college football, especially ones that come with rich history and ones that come with the great backing. And I grew up in the state of Texas, and so I may have a degree from Alabama, but I have watched with my own two eyes what the Red River Shootout is. And by the way, anybody that calls it anything other than that, they are lying to you. We just ban them. We throw them into the shadow realm. They're not allowed to be around us anymore because of this. It's that name. I don't care what the branding says. That is Oklahoma versus Texas. So
we call it the shootout or the rivalry around here. Red River rivalry is okay too.
That's it. But the showdown BS,
stop. Nobody likes that.
Stop it. But I know what the value is of these two teams when they're at their peak. And I saw Texas in the way that they had been recruiting and the way that they had been building. And I thought they're ready for the SEC. And maybe Oklahoma's not, but we're not going to sit here and listen to people with a microphone that have a major platform say Oklahoma is turning into the next Nebraska. They're too proud of a tradition. They have too many resources. They have too many boosters. They have a great athletic director in Joe Castiglione to where that is never going to be a possibility when they left the Big 12 and went to the SEC. They were never going to have Big 10 treatment with Nebraska and what's going on in Lincoln right now. The thing for me is I was very down on the hire of Seth Luttrell from the get-go. When they lost Jeff Levy. When they lost Jeff Levy. It was a gut punch because of I figured that the way that the offense was going to run perfectly for a Jackson Arnold was in that brand, that vitality. And there's so many things that Seth Luttrell does completely different and completely unique compared to what we're seeing from Jeff Levy a season ago. So that automatically puts you at a downward spiral. The injuries also just didn't help you, to say the least. Yeah. The wide receivers were just constantly on the IL. You were seeing injury reports every single week, and it was a who's who of actual players that are coming on the field. Like there were walk-ons that were seeing first team reps. Like that was the level that you were dealing with. And I think that a lot of people, and this is the one knock that I will have against Oklahoma, and it's nothing personal, but Texas was going out and they were adding in players that were meant to go to Alabama, go to Georgia, go to LSU on the offensive line. And that ultimately was the downfall last year with the inconsistent run game, where it was the downfall last year with, I think, Jackson Arnold under the pressure. It led to a lot of turnovers. And so you went 6-6 in the regular season. You got a massive win over Alabama because of you trusted that run game. And you had just that initial spark, and Jalen Milroe threw it into double coverage 4 different times. And 2 of those times they were led back for touchdowns. So it ended up helping you out, but you were down from the get-go was the way that I viewed it. It never felt like that Oklahoma was ever able to find its footing, and largely due to the fact of I never was bought into the hire of Seth Luttrell. Then it was very clear that Seth Luttrell was the wrong answer. So then you go move over to Joe John Finley, and Joe John Finley, he's just like a piece that's kind of filling in for the moment when it was just already a waving the white flag. You bench your starting quarterback in Jackson Arnold, who at that point was either going to have to save his eligibility and maybe would have been able to redshirt last year. But then you go also and kill his confidence because of he wasn't the entire problem in the Tennessee game. I look back at that Tennessee game and say, I get it. You had to make a switch up, but Michael Hawkins wasn't giving you anything either. So it just felt like in that moment, you kind of hit the panic button a little bit too soon. So you had to start on over. And so you already had a quarterback that was down. You had a defense that you were relying too heavily on to get you out of trouble and bail you out of third and long, put you in situations to where you could get the ball back offensively. And I think that ultimately led to what we saw last season. It was a one and done, though. I don't think that this is a negative towards Brent Venables and the way that he recruits and the type of players that he targets. And I still think that, you lose a Peyton you lose a Billy Bowman and you lose a Danny Stutzman, but you still are going to have a really solid defense. And I think that the addition of Jim Nagy and what he is able to provide from a GM perspective and the mind that he's been able to kind of adapt to is really going to help Oklahoma get back to what is necessary in bringing in the right type of talent that you can build around with a guy like Brent Venables as your head coach. And then again, you landed the ultimate chess piece, and in my opinion, the best player in the transfer portal in John Mateer. And With Mateer, it's an automatic upgrade for one major reason. You know that he is going to work in Ben Arbuckle's system because you watched it last year and you know that he's been there for 2 years. So you add all that together, it's really hard to not think, yes, the competition is getting tougher, but he's not starting at stage 1. He's at stage 4. Now you're just upping the levels with the volume with it.
Yeah, well, and to add to that point too, with guys like John Mateer, and then of course even Jaden Ott, one of the best running backs that you could have gotten, a guy that I don't think Oklahoma lands if it wasn't for Jim Nagy. At least not the way that they would have been in the running, because that's something
Jaden
that.
Ott?
Yeah, Jaden Ott.
They would not have landed Jaden Ott without Jim.
No, they would have been in the running, and he probably would have taken a little bit longer time to make his decision. I don't think it would have been at Oklahoma, and Jim Nagy was a huge part of that. I think Jim Nagy was a huge part of, of a lot of things that you've seen so far, and a lot of things that I think Oklahoma fans look at the future because of him. Like you said, his mindset and what he is as that GM role, he's taking over so much that I think that makes it easier. We can even go into talking about Brent Venables taking over as defensive coordinator. I think it's much easier for Brent Venables to do that because of the role that Jim Nagy has taken on. You talk about the recruiting and how much he puts him at ease for that. And then, of course, on the offensive side of the ball, not that you want to completely hand it over to Ben Arbuckle, but you know that you've got Ben Arbuckle and Kevin Wilson, who also came in as an analyst to help out, who's been a tremendous help so far in spring football. And then, of course, you bring Coach K over there, with the quarterbacks coach for Washington State, with Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer. So you've got so much that you put together over there that you can really step back. Not completely, but you can really step back on the offensive side of the ball. So, yeah, I mean, there really is so much that they've done in the offseason. You talk about John Mateer and Jaden Ott, a few wide receivers, of course, adding and revamping that offensive line that has Oklahoma fans really excited about what could be with this offense.
The thing that I look at, Josh, is there are going to be years where you're going to say 9-3 is not acceptable in Norman. And I'll just be completely straight. It's not. It never should be, because of what the history, what the tradition, what Memorial Stadium is like, what the atmosphere, what the overall legacy, the quarterbacks that we've seen come through. 9-3 should never be the standard in Norman. It just shouldn't. But you also look at this team and you say to yourself, hey, they could be 5-0 going into the Red River Shootout with wins over Michigan and Auburn and feeling very confident. And then you look at the murderer's row of a schedule that comes on right after that, to where even if they don't get that win, if they were to split series with Ole Miss and South Carolina and Alabama, and you don't know what Missouri is at this point, but the good news is that you get to play Missouri in a down year for them. Like, going 9-3 is a sign that Jim Nagy brought in the right personnel. Brent Venables made sure that he brought in the right type of coaches. The things that weren't working last year are working now. Like, Oklahoma, I consider to be one of the most chaotic teams in college football, because they could truly alter the college football playoff simply by getting a win. I mean, if they were to, say, beat Texas in the Red River Shootout, they're sitting at 6-0 potentially. And then at this point, let's say that they carry that momentum and then they play South Carolina the following week in Columbia, which, by the way, when you look at Williams-Brice Stadium, it's one of the best atmospheres in college football. And let's say you win that game, and now you're sitting at 7-0. You got to lose just 2 of your last 5 games. You're going to be feeling really confident. But then there's the other time that you say, well, they're going to go 6-6, but their roster's built like they're a 10-2 team. And that's why I hate the narrative that your average record says you are, because not every record is built the same. Not every schedule is built the same. And it's also one of those things where how you respond, I think, speaks more volume about the process of your team. If you're seeing this offense go from being 92nd in rushing and 85th in passing and dead last among Power 4 teams in pressure rate and sacks allowed, to top 20 in passing and top 25 in rushing and top 15 in pass protection, that's a sign of progress. You may be 7-5, but that's what you're looking for. And it shows you that you have the right identity, you have the right people in play, you're spending money properly in NIL to target the right names that are going to elevate your roster. And unfortunately, you just got a bad draw. I mean, Florida last season down the stretch was playing like one of the more complete teams in college football. They got a really bad break early on in the season with how Miami looked with Cam Ward and how Texas A&M was just able to run rampant against them. But if you flip it and you say, well, that was an 8-5 team. That was an 8-5 team that had players that probably could have got you into 9-3 in most years. That's how you got to take it. The scheduling just sometimes isn't fair. But when I look at Oklahoma 9-3 this year, that is the ultimate sign of we're right there. We're ready to be competitive. And it's going to do great for you in recruiting. It's going to do great for you in the transfer portal. If you're able to throw some NIL money together to keep John Mateer back for another season, that's another sign in the right direction. Arbuckle, I think he's too young to be a head coach, so they're going to want to see him duplicate that success one more time. You're in a really, really good spot going into what is going to be a flip schedule, because all those teams that you didn't play in the SEC the last 2 years, now you get to play them. And Arkansas is one of those rosters that I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Arkansas is probably starting fresh at the entire validity of their roster with a head coach. Texas A&M, I don't know what they're going to be next season, but I can promise you that they're probably going to have their fair share of struggles. You get Kentucky. You get Florida. Who knows if Billy Napier's still there? Like, this is the sign that you want to see that you're trending upward, be if you were able to go 9-3.
Yeah, you basically swap Texas's schedule,
Yeah.
and you get that one. Your toughest one is going to be Georgia, which is no joke, so watch out there. But other than that, it's not easy, but it's manageable games, right? And that's the big thing. And with Oklahoma, they made it really clear year one that the defense is what they're going to lean on. They made it very clear that, I think that was the obvious one when they hired Brent Venables, that we want to be a team known for their defense. We want to be a team that has a defensive identity. And that's exactly where he went. And of course, with Dylan Gabriel in the first 2 years, at least you still had an offense that was producing really well. Last season, you didn't even have an offense that produced at all, but it was really that defense that won those 6 games. So it's, what do you see going into year 2 of the SEC, year 4 of Brent Venables on that defensive side of the ball?
I'm confident that he's going to get back to his fundamentals, which is what made him such a staple in the ACC. Like, if you were just to give me a coaching staff and I could build my coaching staff based off of anyone in the league and I could pick one person to be my defense coordinator, Venables would be a very, very, very tough name to beat. Like, when you allow him just to hyper fixate on calling plays defensively, scheming up the X's and O's, it was why Oklahoma was able to win a national title. It was why you saw Clemson win national titles and why they were always the favorites in the ACC, because of they were just built differently and the way that he went out and recruited the right type of players. So I think you're going to get back to that physical approach. I think you're going to get really aggressive on early downs to get pressure under the quarterback. I think you're also going to have that one player that lets it fly, whether that be the cheater role, which is either going to be Kendall Daniels or it's going to be Kendall Doby. Maybe it's going to be Peyton Bowen now playing at strong safety, but you just say, hey, we're going to move you around. Maybe there'll be some plays where we want you lined up in the slot. There'll be some other plays where we want you lined up deep. Like, they're going to allow them to, I think, play an aggressive brand of football that we saw back in the early days of Clemson. And make no mistake, he definitely had a say with Zach Alley when he was calling the shots last year, but this is his bread and butter. And I kind of look at this in the way of, there was last season, Clark Lee decided to say, if I'm going to go down with the ship, I'm going to go down calling the defense, because that's what got me hired at this school. I was a great defense coordinator at Notre Dame. I went back to my alma mater. If I'm going to be the reason why we sink, it's going to be on my shots. It's going to be on my calls. And their defense won them a lot of games. It forced a lot of 3-and-outs. It kept them in a lot of close matchups. And that, I think, is what you're going to see from Brent Venables. He's going to get back to his element of, hey, I've been doing this shit for 3 decades. I know how to call plays. I know what I'm right. I know who I'm scheming up. I know what I have and what I don't. I know what's going to work and what's going to fail. Like, I'm in a really good spot. So that's what I expect. Very aggressive, very hyperfixated, 1 or 2 players that they're going to let kind of fly around the football field, and very detail-oriented, which I think is something that was missing at times last year, especially filling in gaps against the run with how many explosive plays you're allowed or how many times you're allowed, open field missed tackles. That'll be something that I think is going to be a lot more cleaned up, because Brent Venables expects that.
Yeah, and you're right too. He's going to the grease board saying, and I was just talking about this earlier too, is that he knows the pressure. He was talking about that with Josh Pate, if you saw that interview.
Yeah.
That, he knows that the pressure's there. He welcomes it. He's anticipating it. He's excited for it. And so, what is he going to do with that pressure? He's gonna say, if I can't get Jim Knowles in the door to call my defense for me, I'm just going to do it myself, because there's nobody else that I trust more than myself to call defense.
Honestly, it's the right thing too, man.
Yeah.
Especially when you think that you're just sitting aside and going, okay, you know what? This is the year where I am feeling it all. Trust your instincts. Like honestly, how many coaches have saved their job because they said, I'm going to take this into my hands? It ends up working out for you. Now, again, it can backfire. I mean, Jimbo Fisher was one of these guys that I could tell you how many times we were in meetings and we were hearing that, well, he has an offense coordinator, but he was arguing with the offense coordinator. He was calling the plays. And then they bring in Bobby Petrino, and he still was micromanaging that. And it led to him getting fired, like it did. But sometimes you have to trust your instincts, especially if it's not working. Something wasn't working last year. Whether or not Zach Galli was going to ever be fired, he was leaving no matter what when he got offered the job in Morgantown. It may be better, even though Jim Knowles is one of the best defensive minds in the sport. I know my team. I know what works. I know what doesn't. So I'm going to execute every single play and put a lot of my focus in on making sure that side of the ball is great. And again, like the defense hasn't been bad. The defense has had its lulls, especially compared to what we saw last year in the SEC, but it hasn't been terrible. But when they stepped foot in the conference, they were prepared. They weren't elite, but they still were decent. And I still think they could be decent this year. The problem is that you need your offense to be better for you to execute.
Yeah, well, and I think a lot of the way, a lot of the defensive struggles that you saw last season was that where was your offense to complement you? Where was just we've been saying this all offseason. Can we just get a competent offense? It doesn't have to be top 20. It can be top 50, and you're working with something really good because now that that pretty good defense, that pretty solid defense turns into a really good defense because the offense is able to be competent and do something to complement the defense just a little bit. Not go out there that Tennessee game and the defense gets you the ball on the other side of the field at least twice, one of the times on the 5-yard line, and you turn it over the very next play.
Yep.
Are you able to not do that? And of course, you even mentioned it too. I've been probably the biggest Jackson Arnold defenders throughout all last season and into this season. I see talent in the kid, and I don't think he's a bad quarterback. What he was given was a horrible system, a horrible, play calling. There was so much that was just not going to work with what he was given last season. Now, the one thing that you can't defend is he fumbled the ball way too much. Part of that is because of a bad offensive line, but he fumbled the ball way too much, and that's there.
Here's the way that I would put it, Josh. He won Elite 11 out in California. He was a 5-star talent coming out of Denton Guyer. He was from the state of Texas. And anybody who knows the Texas quarterbacks, for you to be at a school like Denton Guyer, you have to have talent.
Yeah.
He was viewed as one of the next great names in college football at the position. And he had his turnover issues, and that was an issue. And we had started to hear a little bit about it in spring practice going into 2024, but he was a new quarterback. Now he goes to Auburn. Now, what would you want me to believe? That the system was horrendous, that the system had constant miscues, and he was put in situations where the offensive line wasn't prepared for Saturday football down in the Southeastern Conference, that wide receivers were dropping balls left and right because they weren't supposed to be playing because of all the injuries that had stockpiled. You didn't have an efficient run game because you weren't able to move the ball with a consistent rate. Or do you want me to say, every single person that graded him out as a 5-star was wrong? Which is the easier thing to blame at this point?
Yeah.
To go and say 30 people that said kid has upside through the wazoo and may eventually hit his stride in an offense that's predicated to him having more usage of his legs like Hugh Freeze wants to run, or that, hey man, all 30 of us, we were wrong. We have no idea what we're talking about. We're idiots. We're stupid. We don't understand the sport of football. We're just going to go ahead and admit and wave the white flag of defeat. Like that's where it is with Jackson Arnold. Well, what I will say is that you did get an upgrade in terms of when you look at the offensive personnel and the way that you need to work for this offense. And this is just the style of Oklahoma quarterbacks that have been successful over the last 2 decades. Like to get a guy like John Mateer who has that swagger, has that energy, has that moxie, that screams Oklahoma more than Jackson Arnold. So two things can be true at once. He ends up being a really good quarterback at Auburn, but you landed a better quarterback that fits the Oklahoma culture.
Yeah, and like you're saying too, I think the potential was there. When, if he was still in Jeff Lebby's system, do you think that would have been a different Jackson Arnold than we saw last season? If he was with the Jeff Lebby's guys, or do you think he would have been different?
They would have been 8-4, I think.
Yeah,
I think they would have won. They would have won the Missouri game, I think.
Yeah.
They probably
possibly Ole Miss.
They probably at least would have kept it close against Ole Miss. I'll tell you what, they wouldn't be down 35-0 after 4 minutes going into the South Carolina game. That would have never happened. And also, I think Levy would have been very, very strong-headed about keeping Jackson Arnold in the system before flipping over to Michael Hawkins. I think that he would have sat him down, had a conversation. Who knows what the Tennessee game would have been? But I said 8-4 last year was the ceiling for Oklahoma. I thought that they were probably a 7-5 team. If all things went according to plan, maybe they'd get a few upset wins. They did. They beat Alabama. But if you have Jeff Lebby as your offense coordinator, I think that you guarantee at least 7-5, 8-4.
Yeah. Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And then even to go to your rankings too, with him being a 5-star guy, where he came from, a lot of people want to act like as if it would be so much easier to say he was ranked as a 5-star, but he's really the 3-star talent. Like, that's a huge jump. When you talk about the talent gap between a 3 to 5, that is a huge jump there. But do you want to play a little bit of a game? You can kind of give me win, loss, or toss on each of these games, and I'm sure you've already looked through.
I'll tell you right now. So last night we did the most underrated games in the SEC for 2025. Oklahoma came on it 4 times, so they're just toss-ups. Like, that's what it is. I'll play it, but there's going to be a lot. I will say.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay. And I think you and I would probably agree on them too. Illinois State, I think that one's pretty easy.
Yeah, win. Easy win. That's the moment where I go and say Giovanni Gibson's going to win the Bolitnikoff, John Mateer's going to win the Heisman Trophy.
Yes, you got Illinois State. I'll probably throw in Temple, Kent State in there as well. Those are probably your 3 that you're giving them.
I want to talk to Joe Castiglione and ask him, why are you going to Philly? Like, I get it, but like last year, I thought the Missouri game in Amherst was going to be the weirdest matchup. Like, Temple doesn't have a stadium; they play in the link. Like, they play where the Eagles are. The Eagles are home the next day. Like, what went into this conversation, Joe? Because like, how much is Temple paying you to get their ass whipped at home?
A lot of Oklahoma fans are interested in going to Philly, Philly Stadium, and go to see that. So
we had a conversation of if there was just like a drunken random night that we could go to a game, and there were 2 like you were close. Would you? Let's say Oklahoma played on like a Friday night. Could we do the Friday night and then go to the Saturday game the next day?
That would be pretty awesome.
Fun. It'd be like we're in Philly. Why not?
Yeah, that would have been great. Okay, so we've got 3 that we'll probably mark down. Let's go Michigan.
I think it's a win. I think that Bryce Underwood at this point in Chip Lindsey's offense, I think he's going to start week 1. I think that it has nothing to do with the NIL. Mikey Keene's a really good backup that you want to start in like a drive or 2. You don't want him leading your team against a Brent Venables defense. I get that. Sharon Moore coming on home, playing in that game in front of his crowd with having a quarterback as the number 1 prospect is really good. But they did lose a lot on the offensive side that I don't think enough people are talking about. Like the wide receiver room is very, very intriguing to me out in Ann Arbor. I like Justice Haynes, but I think that you could have a really good season. I think that David Stone, especially now signed to a new NIL deal, this could be the game that we talk about him being one of the better run defenders and best transitional players from year 1 to year 2. And I just trust John Mateer in this offense and this being a home game. If this was in Ann Arbor, I'd probably lean a little bit more in favor of Michigan, but it's in Norman, so I go win.
Yeah, well, and the interesting thing about Michigan, too, is that Oklahoma and Michigan are almost identical going back to last season. Bad offensive lines, good defenses, struggles at quarterback, injuries, almost identical. And so what moves have they each made in the offseason to really make that leap? I feel like Oklahoma's got the edge. Maybe not by much, but I feel like they've got the edge, so I tend to agree with you.
I will say this is the ultimate crossroads games where there is a path. One that is the happy yellow brick road and one that is the dark, desolate forest where you may not come out alive. The winner of this game has an opportunity to go down the yellow brick road and punch their ticket to the college football playoff. If it looks bad for Oklahoma against Michigan, or Michigan just looks horrendous on the offense, it's going to be a long season. Like, it is the ultimate crossroad game and one of the best games in week 2.
Yeah, and this is a game, too, that I talked pretty much in depth. I think it was last week before, that, I think this could be the game that decides the season for Oklahoma, but it doesn't necessarily. Just because you beat Michigan, don't get too excited.
Right.
It might not be a good Michigan team. Or, it could be the vice versa. For Michigan, they beat Oklahoma and they feel, oh man, we just walked into Norman. That's a big, big feat, but slow down. It might not be a good Oklahoma team. We don't
Yeah.
know. These are two teams that we're really basing a lot of what ifs on, based on how their season's going to go.
You could also look back in 6 weeks and say, holy crap, Michigan went on this epic run and they killed it in the Big Ten. Meanwhile, we're sitting at 4-2 and wondering what the hell happened. It could easily be that way for either team.
Yeah, absolutely. You could beat that team and then find out that, yep, I guess that really was the team that we were hoping they were going to be. Then you got Auburn. So Jackson Arnold coming to Norman on September 20th.
This is me, and this is probably where the Alabama homerism comes out just a little bit. I don't trust Hugh Freeze. Like my big point this offseason has been Hugh Freeze has gotten a top 10 transfer portal class. He has gotten back-to-back top 10 recruiting classes. He has landed great defensive talent. He kept DJ Durkin from taking the job both at Notre Dame and Ohio State. He has made sure that he has built his program around having success. And there's just a part of me that says, I can't trust you. And there's also this part of me that says, when you bring in really good talent and you have really good coaches and the transfer portal seems to be working out and you're not developing the players the way that you think that they should, it all comes back to the head coach. And that's where I'm at with Hugh Freeze. I just don't think that right now he's doing his part when it comes to developing. And again, Auburn last year, they played over 24 freshmen, like meaningful reps. Like they were not ready for SEC football. But that doesn't mean that I'm ready to buy into, hey, Auburn, you landed Eric Singleton, you landed Cam Coleman. You also didn't know how to run the freaking football last season when you had Jarquez Hunter. Like, he should have been easily the entire identity of your offense. And Jackson Arnold, I believe that he's going to be a better fit for Hugh Freeze's system, but I'm also like, the turnovers, man. I talked to somebody recently out in Auburn, and they said the exact same thing. Spring football, he looked really good when he wasn't throwing into double coverage. The beautiful deep ball is there. The running is there. The decision-making still is a problem, and the decision-making at home, I think, is going to be the reason why Oklahoma wins.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think you're either going to see a Hugh Freeze learn how to adapt with his quarterback and run a scheme that his quarterback is comfortable with, or you're going to see the same Hugh Freeze that saw that Peyton Thorne couldn't run the RPO, that Peyton Thorne was not going to be that run down the field kind of guy and running any kind of option, and just still run it in the system that you want to run. I think that's the two paths you're going to go. You're either going to get Hugh Freeze adapting to what Jackson Arnold's good at and calling that, or Jackson Arnold's going to look like he did last season because Hugh Freeze is just too stubborn.
Just for the love of God, if you have a 3rd and 6 and can win a football game in conference play, don't throw the damn football with a quarterback that is turnover prone. That's all I'm asking Hugh Freeze. Because then you get the Kip 6, and then we're all sitting there wondering, what the hell did we just watch? Like what was this? I had Auburn fans about ready to go jump into the river. That's how pissed off they were when they texted.
There should have never been any PO on the end of that play.
No, that play should never happen. They should have said, hey, Michael Hawkins, prove that you are worthy of being the long-term answer at quarterback, driving 86 yards and score. Don't let Kip Lewis bail you out of trouble.
And again, you had Jarquez Hunter. What are you doing?
What are you doing? It just bothers me. And he's calling the plays again this year, so that's where I'm at.
Then we go to October 11th, where you've got the Red River Shootout.
That's toss-up. And it's toss-up because I know what this game is. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that there could be a moment where, like, Texas, they won 49-0, and Oklahoma, like, they felt like a more cohesive team. Like the year before, 2 years ago, Oklahoma gets the game-winning drive. Nick Anderson back in the end zone. There you go, Dylan Gabriel, the hero. And they go to the Alamo Bowl, and Texas is playing in the college football playoff. Like, that's a toss-up game. Just the rivalry, the pageantry, what that elemental atmosphere is like in Dallas, inside that building. I'm always just going heads or tails. Whatever it lands on, that's fine with me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the right way to do it in that one too. And especially in a year that there's some questions with Texas, no doubt. They lost a lot. They've got to replace a lot. We'll have to see.
I will say going into the year, from the quarterback perspective, Oklahoma has the advantage. I like John Matthews a little bit more than Arch Manning. And that's not, and again, it's not a shot at Arch. Like, people are like, you hate Arch Manning. You don't buy into it. I don't want to have a Nico Iamaleava 2.0 situation where we hype this kid up and he has to be all of these things. And then we're like, Why is he not improving? But yet still Texas goes 10-2 and they're in the playoff. Like that's where my brain is when it comes to this.
Well, and Oklahoma fans are tired of hearing of Arch, but I get it.
Yeah.
I get it from both sides. It's like he's up there for a reason. We'll see what he's capable of.
Just let him breathe. Let him get 5 games in, and then we can have an actual discussion if he's the next Tim Tebow, Paul Feinbaum.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of us agree with you on that. Then you've got at South Carolina.
That is such an emotional game. And this was actually one of my top 5 underrated games in college football next year because of, remember, this is a game where South Carolina is going to be coming off of a road test against LSU. So what does the momentum look like in this game? It's a toss-up because of, let's say Oklahoma wins. Can they carry that inertia, that energy into the next week at Willie B and be able to beat up on a South Carolina team that is going to be missing a lot of defensive players that we didn't, that aren't from the team from a season ago. They still have questions at the wide receiver position. They still have questions at the running back room. But what if they lose this game? What is going to be the response mechanism? And what if this is South Carolina's signature win? Down in Death Valley, down against Garrett Nussmeier. Lenore Sellers has a Heisman-worthy moment. Do they carry that inertia? Do they carry that energy back home? So that's a toss-up to me.
Well, and both teams beat up from the week before. Both teams going against a very tough opponent and having to come away from a big win.
Emotional game. A very emotional game, I think, on both sides. So that's just it. When you throw that element into it, it's really hard.
Yeah. Ole Miss at home.
So it's at home. I lean in favor of Oklahoma. I will say this is the most underrated game in the SEC this year. This was my number 1 game because of I don't know what I'm getting in Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Like I genuinely don't. I'm not saying that their defense is going to be elite. I'm not saying that they're going to be better than what they were last year with a brand new quarterback and multiple new weapons. But it would be the most Lane Kiffin thing to have a team that underachieves with all of this money, all of this resources, all of the buy-in, all of the return, and they don't make the college football playoffs. And shame on Lane Kiffin for not going last year because I had a lot of money that Ole Miss would be the most dangerous college football playoff team. But in a year where you have a new quarterback and a bunch of wide receivers that are in the portal and a bunch of new faces on the defense, like you go 10-2. It's the most Lane Kiffin thing to do. Like no expectations. They're going to go 11-1 and go to Atlanta and be in the college football playoff. So I lean Oklahoma because of what I'm getting in John Mateer and with that game being in Norman. But it is not going to surprise me if this comes down to like a game-winning field goal on either side.
Yeah, and I would agree with you too. You just like I trust Lane Kiffin's going to do something, but what has he got? You're replacing Jackson Dart. That's the biggest piece on your offense. So that's the biggest question mark for me is what do you get? What do you get at the quarterback position? And that's kind of what I'm waiting to see from Ole Miss.
Yeah. Also, Caden Lee is going to be really interesting because he stepped up in so many games last year as that slot option, especially when Trey Harris was out. Austin Simmons, for a quick cup of coffee in that Georgia game, looked like he was not phased at all. He did not seem like the moment was too big for him. What's it going to be now playing on the road? What's it going to be now playing with a full season? The one caveat I will say is that he's no longer playing baseball. His entire focus is in on football this offseason. So that's a big, big win for Ole Miss. It's not the only win. I talked to somebody recently. That secondary that was very hit and miss a season ago, it is not looking good going into this year. Like Pete Golding is going to have to pull a lot of magic out of his ass to go ahead and put something on the ground this season.
Yeah, so Ole Miss is you're calling that one a toss,
I go
right?
Oklahoma, but
okay.
I won't be shocked if it is Ole Miss.
I got you. I feel you. And then you got at Tennessee down in Knoxville.
I go Oklahoma. I think there's a part of me that says there are just so many questions. Like I could see Tennessee being a 9-win team this year just because of they have an identity on offense. And Heupel knows what he's getting out of his players. But there's just so many question marks. Like I look at the quarterback position. No question for Oklahoma. Question with Joey Aguilar. Is he even going to be starting at that point? Running back position. Jaden Ott is arguably a top 10 running back in college football. He's certainly a top 5 running back in the SEC. Javonte Barnes, really good number 2, complimentary piece. What do you have with Deshaun Bishop? What do you have with Peyton Lewis? What do you have with Star Thomas? Wide receivers, fully healthy. I probably lean a little bit Giovanni Gibson and Deion Burks. Upside, I lean Mike Matthews. Tight end position, that I'd give to Tennessee. Defense. You're replacing 2 studs on your defensive line. You're replacing both of your starting linebackers. You're going to have Jamad McCoy coming off a torn ACL. You have several other players that you hope are going to be ready and able to play at this point late in the season. You have Boo Carter, who wants to play 2 ways. Like, I just have so many questions when it comes to Tennessee that I don't have for Oklahoma.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that answer too. So you're leaning Oklahoma on that game?
Oklahoma in that game, yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you've got Alabama at Alabama.
I'm sorry, it's Alabama.
Yeah.
It's the fact that they were kept out of the college football playoff last year in Kalen DeBoer's first season, and there are people that think Kalen DeBoer is an overrated coach, despite the fact that he has a winning percentage of 82% in his career. The fact that he was less than, at that time, a year removed from playing in the national championship, and that was the game that kept them out of the college football playoff. Oklahoma you would have to have circa 2012 Johnny Manziel type moment with John Mateer to win that football game. That and Vanderbilt are the 2 games that I can tell you from speaking to people that I know on that staff. They have circled in big red, inexcusable loss. Yeah. We cannot lose to them at home in this game.
Yeah, definitely not at home. Last season was inexcusable enough, but you definitely can't do it again. And now too, I think, regardless of who's starting, I think Kalen DeBoer has more personnel that fit his system. So I think a lot of people just think Jalen Milroe's gone. I think they might be upgrading at quarterback position in some regard.
They are because of what you bring in with Ryan Grubb.
Yeah,
and I've spoken to several people about just the overall impact of having a Ryan Grubb on your staff. It is like trusting your best friend to watch your child and never having to make a phone call in 8 hours. Mm-hmm. Like, that is what having a Ryan Grubb does for that quarterback room. And the way that he takes on over for the play calling and allows Kalen DeBoer to focus in on other areas that you got to look at. I've heard that the offensive line looks really good in terms of what they were able to bring in via the portal. They really liked the IMG kid, Carroll, coming on in as a freshman. They think he could be a day 1 starter. They think if they upgraded at the right tackle position, even though that Elijah Pritchett, I don't think was the biggest problem. They like what they have with Caden Proctor back this year. Parker Brailsford is really confident. Jeremy Bernard is a name that I think there were so many times last year when you look at Jalen Milroe and how he would hold on to the football, it felt like he hated Jeremy Bernard. And I don't think you will get that in Ty Simpson or Austin Mack or Keelan Russell. Isaiah Horton's a really good wide receiver, complementary piece number 3. And that defense, dude, like, their secondary, there are going to be players that probably would start on most SEC teams that will play less than 30% of reps next year. Like, that's how good they are. It is a straight up, if you are not holding up your end of the bargain, we have your replacement waiting in the wings. That's what gives Alabama the bench.
That defense is what's starting rumors of Nick Saban still finding the recruits, not just being a part of the recruits, but he is actively recruiting, it feels like.
The other thing is, like, so I was texting a buddy and he said that Alabama, they didn't go super hard in the portal for a lot of guys, but they pulled in Ohio State. And everyone's like, well, what do you mean they pulled in Ohio State? There's a reason why Deontay Lawson did not go to the NFL draft. There is a reason why Keon Sabb did not go to the NFL draft. There is a reason why Caden Proctor didn't transfer or Jeremy Bernard didn't leave the school via the draft. There's a reason why Jam Miller is back. They did what Ohio State did. They said, you, and you are our foundation. We will pay you a lot of money to stick around for 1 more year because we feel like that if you can be our leaders, you can get us over the hump. Yeah. And everyone's like, well, they spent so much money in the portal. It's like, yeah, by retaining talent that they know they couldn't replace. That is what good teams do. That is what great GMs do. That is why you go land a Jim Nagy to make sure, hey, John Mateer, you're a day 2 pick. Come win a Heisman Trophy. Come take us to a national championship. We'll pay you the money that you're worth. That's why you make those moves.
Yeah. Let's go into these last 2 games real quick. You could jump all the way into the mid-November, late November. You got Missouri. That's in Norman.
Yeah, just too many questions for Mizzou. I go Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, and I think last season should have been a win for Oklahoma too.
Just the way it ended. Like,
yeah,
just the tomfoolery of both these teams. Like, it felt like I remember sitting at a bar and talking to one of my buddies, and I was like, this feels like a who doesn't want to win game.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
No,
it wasn't
you take it.
We want to win. It was no. You can win this game because we can't afford to win this game.
Yeah,
You had
it
Drew
was.
Pine beat you. Like that's where I
Yeah,
had issues.
yeah, and it was horrible, and it was just a self destruction for Oklahoma too, because you were owning that game.
Yeah.
Should have been a win, and then you've got the last game, the one that I'm ranking preseason. I think is just the toughest game of the season. This might be playoff contention. LSU in Norman.
It's in Norman, so I think that could be a game that gives you some advantages, especially if you're saying, hey, we're getting the old version of Brian Kelly. Hey, can you win this one and just make sure that you guarantee us in the playoff? Watch this. Nope. Nope. It's like, yeah, I could see it. I just, LSU has spent so much money with what they didn't utilize toward that recruiting class. And there were people that were saying that they had thrown millions and millions and millions of dollars into this 2025 recruiting class. And when they lost Underwood and when they lost a few other players, you're like, okay, now we're gonna go spend like crazy in the portal. There is not a single move that I have looked at and been like, I don't like that. Like Jack Pyburn's gonna be like a third down pass rusher, and the NIL value that they got for him, it's like, okay, makes total sense. Patrick Payton's coming on in. It's like, okay, yeah, I can see how that's going to really work out well for Blake Baker. They landed AJ Halsey recently from Houston, and I'm like, I've seen this kid play in person. He is so damn good, and you're going to have him as your third safety because of screw it. We have the money. Let's just go out and pay what we can to get him. If you're a believer in Garrett Nussmeier, this should be a win. If you're not a believer in Garrett Nussmeier, then probably this could be a toss-up game. I'm a believer in Garrett Nussmeier. I think he's the second best quarterback coming back in college football. So I go LSU.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think I put out my SEC quarterback rankings. I think Nussmeier and Lenora Sellers, personally,
1 and 2.
Yeah, they're 1 and 2. You can put them either way. I put Nussmeier at the top personally. I think
I did.
It's just I like the veteran aspect of him. If you're talking athleticism and all that, sure, Lenora Sellers wins, but overall, just as a quarterback and what that quarterback is intended to do in his own regarding or in his own system, I'm going Nussmeier for sure.
There was a quarterback coach that I spoke to earlier this summer that said the reason why you lean Nussmeier over every quarterback besides maybe Cade Klubnik is there's nothing left to show. He's been in the system for multiple years underneath Joe Sloan and what was the passing attack with Mike Denbrock. But the other thing is he has played in some of the biggest atmospheres in college football. He had to replace Jaden Daniels in Bryant-Denny Stadium in 2023. So he's played in Bryant-Denny Stadium. He knows what that atmosphere is like. He played at Kyle Field and he jumped out to an early lead and he had his fair share of struggles, but the defense also couldn't stop Marcel Reed. That is one of the largest and loudest crowds in college football. He's played at South Carolina with his back against the wall. He's played at Ole Miss. He's played against Ole Miss. He's played down, and they've said, we need you to convert on 4th and 5, and you have ice in your veins, and you're throwing verts to Aaron Anderson, and the first play of overtime, you say, you know what? I got this. Game over. Like LSU didn't lead the entire game, and they won a football game against Ole Miss. Like that's a stat that I still can't believe. There's nothing left to phase a guy like Garrett Nussmeier, where there are still some things for a Lenore Sellers, a John Mateer, a Diego Pavia, an Arch Manning, a DJ Lagway that they haven't been through just yet. I think that's what separates Nuss from everybody else going into the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that veteran mentality, just being a veteran and understanding the game and showing that you're a veteran is very valuable in the game. So last season, I think Oklahoma fans felt pretty disrespected at the 7.5 mark that Vegas put out there. This season it went down even more to 6.5. I assume by talking to you, you're taking the over on that 6.5.
Yeah, I'm taking the over. 8-4 feels like a really good middle ground for them, and 8-4 is not a bad thing. There's also the way that you go 8-4. Let's say your losses are to LSU, to Alabama, to Texas, and just for good measure, we'll throw in South Carolina. And let's say it's 2 of those games are by a field goal. One of those games is less than a touchdown, and the third game's a blowout. You've shown improvements. Your offense is probably at least keeping you in games going into the fourth quarter. Your defense is getting enough stops, but you are replacing multiple veterans, whether that be a Danny Stutzman or whether that be a Billy Bowman or whether that be somebody on the defensive line. Like you're replacing guys that added that veteran leadership in the fourth quarter that can kind of pull you over the line. So 8-4 with those type of losses is not bad. 9-3, where even if it's a LSU comes in and they kick the living dog crap out of you because if they want to send a statement before they play in Atlanta. You go to Alabama and you lose by 17 because of Kalen DeBoer is not falling for that shit twice. And then you lose on a field goal to, I don't know, we'll say South Carolina. Mm-hmm. But you beat Texas, you beat Michigan. Both those teams are still in the college football playoff hunt. Ole Miss ends up going like 9-3. And part of the reason they're out of the playoff picture is because of you beat them in that matchup. You feel really good about that. So for me, 6.5 is way too disrespectful. I would have had it at 7.5 just because of what you have with the quarterback, what you have with the offensive coordinator, the quarterback's coach working together. I also think that you have to have the realistic expectation. If they were to make the college football playoff this year, it would be a miracle in terms of how much revamp they had and turnover in the offseason that they were able to establish, build an identity, and build a cohesive chemistry culture like in 6 months to put themselves in that vicinity. If they were to go 10-2 and they guarantee their spot in the playoff, that is beyond a massive win.
Yeah.
But if they were 9-3 and they're having the conversation of, well, let's see where our wins rank up. Let's see who else is 9-3. Do we get that extra kind of notch over our belt because of the two teams that played in the SEC championship? We lost them and we lost them close. That could also be another win. The expectation should be, I think, 8-4. I think that you're really excited if you're 9-3 and you just miss out on the playoff because it shows that you landed the right personnel. And if you're 10-2, I mean, anybody that still wants to sit out here and say Brent Venables' contract is a joke, that, you going after John Mateer, he was never ready for the competition. You going after Giovanni Gibson was a really dumb move because he comes in from Arkansas Pine Bluff. You were dealing with the injuries of Jaden Ott when he was at Cal last year, so it was a risk. Like, we don't need their opinions anymore. We need them to sit on down, have a nice cool glass to shut the hell up, and enjoy watching them in the playoff. That's what you need in Sooner Country this offseason or next offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with 7.5 too, it feels more right because 8 wins, because I've heard others say this and it's pretty true. This is a 10 to 11 win roster.
Yeah.
But with an 8 win schedule. I mean, it really is. You talk about Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, LSU, all to close out your season. That's brutal. Even a down Missouri is not easy. So that's in the mix of all the rest of what you've got to go through. So that's a brutal schedule. So
it's the way I would describe it is I think that this is going to be Brent Venables' best team, and they still may finish 8-4.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That's what it is. This may be Brent Venables' best team, and you have never felt more confident in him as your head coach, and you still are 8-4 and the number 24 team in college football this year. Yeah, that's a reality that you could be facing.
And Sooner fans are bummed about 8-4, but recognizing everything that went into it, that is a huge plus from what you had a season ago, especially if that 8-4 feels good, like you were mentioning. That hey, we lost, but we weren't out of those games. 9-3. You're talking about with this schedule, if you're 9-3 with a loss to 3 playoff contending teams, then or even playoff teams that have made it to the playoffs, pretty much cemented their ways in there, then you're probably in the playoffs with 9-3. 10-2, like you said, you're cemented. There's no way you're going 10-2 with this schedule and not making it.
Like, there were teams last year, Alabama, and I say that cautiously because of the way they played against Michigan and lost, South Carolina and Ole Miss. Every single, and I'll even throw in Missouri for that matter, just a little bit. Every single one of them could have gone to the college football playoff, and they would have played in Bloomington, Indiana, and they still would have won by double digits against that Indiana team. Like, the 9-3, unfortunately, because of the way that the playoff committee works, they're not going to always warrant what strength of schedule is and what records are. They're going to just see numbers, how you performed going into that last week of the season, and they will come up with some analogy and some formula that says this is why X, Y, and Z teams belong there. When Indiana was tested one time and they got blown out by Ohio State and they were in the playoff, and SMU played one ranked team all year before going into Charlotte, and they're in the college football playoff. And I'm not saying because at the end of the day, I'm a college football fan. I want what's best for college football. I'm not for the Super League that eventually gets rid of all these other games. And you can catch me on a November night and Tuesday watching Maction and Conference USA. Like, I want this for college football. But we can also say schedules aren't built fair, and there's a reason why the SEC continues to clamor for more representation, because of it's unjust that you're saying South Carolina, who was the hottest team in the country, and that could be Oklahoma this year, that could be Florida this year, that could be a lot of teams this year, they end up being punished because of they have another schedule where they play 9 ranked teams, and Indiana plays 1. But because of also they have that 9th conference schedule game, oh, we got to give them the pass. That's the other thing that drives me crazy with a lot of college football casual fans is, oh, the SEC's got to play a 9th conference game. Then you have to guarantee them 5 spots in the playoff. Like, I'm sorry, they're not going to sign up for that. Where literally every year with 8 conference games, 8 of the top 10 toughest schedules come from that conference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think looking at it too, I know a lot of people don't like the SEC talk of it being the greatest conference. There is no debate. It is the top 2. I mean, that is literally Big Ten and SEC.
It's the deepest conference. I think that, and this has been the Big Ten's major problem for the last, I would go probably 8 or 9 years. They are really good at the top. Michigan, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, even 10-2. It's a really good year. And you'll throw in that random team, the Washington, the Illinois, the Indiana, and then it's just drop off 7-5, 7-5, 6-6, where you're going to have 2 teams that feel a cut above everybody else in the SEC, and then 9 teams that are fighting for 9-3 and 10-2.
Yeah,
and that is the problem.
Yeah.
And people don't want to look at that. People just want to say top heavy. The volume of teams that can beat up on each other and maybe force that team that we think is elite suffer a loss, drastically different than what you get in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and I've talked about that with my brother too, because he's Big Ten heavy. He's a Nebraska fan, Big Ten heavy, and so
I'm so sorry.
he feels that way. And I was like, well, I mean, let's count the bottom feeders in the Big Ten, and then count the true bottom feeders in the SEC, and it's just not there. The numbers are totally different. But Cole, I appreciate you so much for taking time. Real quick, tell my listeners where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, so we do live streams every single Monday and Thursday on SEC Unfiltered, at SEC Unfiltered on social media. You can look at me at Mr. Cole Thompson. We got a ton of videos coming on out. It's July 1st, so happy Bobby Bonilla Day to all those who celebrate the $1 million that goes into his bank account. We have everything from bold predictions to schedule releases to breakdowns of X's and O's to 3 toughest games, all of that. SEC Media Day is coming in next month. So we're on the rise. We do 2 live streams a week. There's also a 3rd live stream with Chris Phillips and Blake Ruffino. There's maybe going to be a 4th live stream that we add on in. We do weekend shows. We do instant analysis, reactions, all of it at SEC Unfiltered on YouTube. And if you want to follow us at SEC Unfiltered and at Mr. Cole Thompson on social media.
All right, man. I appreciate it. I'll let you hop out. But again, I appreciate you taking the time to come over here and talk a little bit of Sooners football with me.
Hey, I appreciate you, Josh. Take care, man.
You too. All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump through the live chat real quick. I was able to see a few here. I know a few questions I'm not going to get to tonight, but I will jump through here anyways. This is one that I will try to get to. I'm going to try to mark these down. Peyton Houston, by the way, I might as well just answer this one. I don't think so. I don't think Oklahoma's looking good, but it does seem like there's a higher chance. So I'll throw that one out there. But I'll do more in depth throughout this upcoming week. Probably not on Thursday. Thursday we've got our show kind of lined up, but I'll try to get some shorter episodes specifically to kind of give more of a recruiting update. And so I know that there was a few others on the recruiting side too that I'll get to. Sooner Cowboy says BV needs to want to win more, in my opinion. Just don't seem hungry enough to win. Yeah, I mean, I think if you listen to Brent Venables, he's not like some coaches. I don't want to throw any coaches' names out there, but there's certain coaches that I can listen to, and I don't really feel a passion in their voice. I don't really feel the frustration in their voice the way that I do with Brent Venables. So I think he wants to win. It's just, I mean, again, I think a lot of people are harsh on him for what happened last season. There's a lot to blame Brent Venables for. I don't think all of it's to blame Brent Venables for. And he takes accountability more than half the coaches out there, I think. So I get the frustrations though, man. I'm not ever gonna harp on you for having frustrations. Chuck says facts are the facts for BV. He just hasn't proven himself, and time is running out. But I am pulling for him. Yeah, I mean I'm in the same boat as you, Chuck. Just because I think BV And I guess corrections too. Corrections 101 even says, I still believe in BV. I think this year will go great. I mean, I think this year will go great, just as Cole and I were just now talking about. I think this season should be a good one for Oklahoma. But, to go back to what Chuck was saying, he hasn't proven himself. As much as we like him, I think most Oklahoma fans like Brent Venables, like what he brought in, likes the culture that he's instilling, and even these offseason moves. I think a lot of Oklahoma fans like this. But then, he's not proving it. He says he is taking ownership, young dude. Yeah, I said he's taking ownership. I agree with you. Yeah, he is taking ownership. That's why he's calling the plays on defense. He doesn't want somebody else to take that over. He wants to completely take that on himself. And that's big. I think that's why you got to like him. Got a question. Why on so many 5-star busts at OU? Is OU recruiting the wrong type of players? Just giving my opinion, but football is a dirty game, bro. Just look at the schools that win national. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. To answer your question, I don't think they're looking for the wrong players. I guess I don't really have an answer for why there's so many five. You're not wrong. There does seem to be too many of those 5-star busts. Some schools and some systems just don't fit. And I think in today's world, it's a little different with 5 stars. I don't think it was the case with Jackson Arnold, because I know that's the most recent one that we think of. There's first of all, quarterback is one of the toughest to live up to the hype as a 5-star, because you have to fit in wherever you're at. That is the toughest to live up to the hype. Toughest position, obviously, but it's the toughest to live up to the hype there. Just because there's so many moving parts around the quarterback that would affect him. So that's one thing for a quarterback. But yeah, I just think there's, in today's day and age, I feel like there are a lot of 5 stars that they know that star rating, and so they feel like they might be worth more than what they really are, even though they haven't shown it on the field yet. So that's some, and that's gone back for ages. They feel like they're worth more, and maybe that gets to their head. I've seen that with some that come into Oklahoma, and I won't mention names. I don't like to cut down players, past or present, just because there's still a history with them at Oklahoma, and so yeah, I think that's part of it. But I really don't know the answer to that. I do have some thoughts about trying to get to stuff kind of revolving around those questions, though, for sure. Chuck says, can we get some info on how summer workouts are going? I am tired of hearing the same info. Yes, let's get to that. Chuck, I'm going to dig into that. I'm close with some of the guys that I think I can kind of bug a little bit about that, so maybe I can bug. And then Chuck also says, I think the only question marks that we have this year is, how will the defense do without the proven leaders, and how will the wide receiver room look like, and will they do their part? Sorry, I was being dyslexic there and could not read that properly. But yeah, I agree with you. That's much like what I've been saying. The biggest thing that you see from Oklahoma is, we know that the defense should be good, right? I think we have total confidence, total faith in that. But will they be able to fill those roles of Billy and Danny? I think those are the biggest ones. Ethan is another big one. Ethan Downs is another big one to see leave. But are they able to fill those roles, and how will they do without them there? That is a question mark. But that's not even the biggest one, right? I think the wide receiver room is the one that you're looking at. I don't think there's a question mark in the quarterback room. I just think there's a lot of anticipation. Is it going to live up to the hype that we believe it should be? So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of what ifs with Oklahoma, but it's trending in the right direction, right? And then War Room says, Choklahoma will continue to choke as long as that so-called coach is still coaching. I know this is a troll, so I'm not going to give it that much attention, but I did see others kind of chiming in. I mean, this is laughable at the best. Is that a USC logo too? Just picked that up. I wasn't even paying attention to that. But yeah, I just think this is pretty laughable to call Oklahoma that. For one, you got Mars sitting down there, 7 national championships, also 7 Heisman winners. I mean, Oklahoma is a storied program, blue blood program. So you can razz all you want, but you might be right. Maybe Oklahoma blows this season away like they did last year, and you're right. If so, then I will try to bookmark that one and come back and tell you, you were right, we were wrong. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to do that. I just don't think that's the case. And that's a big part of homerism kind of jumping in there. But I think Cole and I agree pretty well too. I think that Oklahoma, it just feels like this is an 8-win season. Feels like that's your concrete. 8 wins. You don't feel ecstatic, but you feel confident, right? I think at 8 wins, you feel confident. Okay, hey, that was a step in the right direction, and that was the first year under this new regime. I'm calling it a new regime, new offense, really. You got rid of Zach Galli, he left, and then you've got the new offensive staff and rebuilding that side of the ball, really. So Oklahoma has a lot to look forward to for the future. Like I said, Jim Nagy is the reason for that. So 8 wins, you feel confident about the growth. Anything more than that, 9, 10, and you're in the talks of a college football playoff berth, you're feeling like, okay, hey, we did it. Let's keep this going because this is the growth that we wanted. 8 wins is just like, you know what? Okay, we're okay with that. It's not the worst thing in the world. It sucks. We could have done better, and let's move forward. So, I could kind of probably go all day on that one. I do see Bishop in the chat. He says Sooners never flinch. Got that right. Absolutely. Dang straight. What's up, Bishop? And then one more. Okay, so I did see this one too. Sooner Cowboy says OU softball landed freshman All-American pitcher from Ole Miss. I didn't even see that news yet, so I appreciate you for breaking that to me because I've been too busy. So appreciate that. But then also Chuck says, this is Jackson Arnold show. Listen, man, it was hard for me to see Jackson go through what he did. All right, so I'll try to stop talking about him until we play Auburn. I promise. We'll cut him out of the show. But you're right. I mean, I liked him. I liked the kid. I was hopeful for him, man. But I'm excited about John Mateer. I hope you guys are too. I think it's obvious that you guys are. But there's a lot to look forward to in this upcoming season. As we just previewed, I want to thank everybody so much for tuning in. Make sure to hit that like button. That takes no time at all. Just hit the like button real quick. Even if you didn't like it, it doesn't hurt you at all to hit the like button, and it helps us out tremendously. Share it with a friend. Follow us on social media at Real Josh Mahler is my X handle. You can follow this show. So the Voice of College Football, you can follow at the VOCFB, like it says on the screen there, down in the description below. You can find this show for Oklahoma fans, specifically at Oklahoma VOCFB. So go follow us on those platforms on X, Instagram, and I think even TikTok as well. So go follow us over there to help support the show and help us keep on growing. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We will catch you next time. Boomer.